Hi everyone, bonjour tout le monde. This is Aglaée Jacob, a registered dietitian and author of the book Digestive Health with Real Food. You might know me as the Paleo Dietitian, and I have my website at paleo-dietitian.com. I also have my Facebook page called Aglaée the Paleo Dietitian. If you don't know how to spell my name, it's simply Aglaee, or you can simply go to paleo-dietitian.com to find a link to my Facebook and Twitter pages. All right, so the reason I'm here today is because I'm now back to school. I'm studying naturopathic medicine at the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine in Toronto. And last week we did a debate. I was representing the meat eating side, and I debated against a vegetarian, another student from my school. I would have liked to record the debate live, but my opponent didn't allow me to do that. So what I decided to do, because there were so many of you that were interested in hearing my side of the story and the argumentation in favor of meat and against it also, I decided to just present my part of the presentation to you here and upload it to YouTube so you can watch it in the comfort of your own home and then decide whether meat is a good choice for you or not. So that's what we'll do. I'll present my the presentation I did at the debate this month, and then I'll also discuss the argument of my opponents and what I have to say in response to them. Okay, so maybe a few things you might want to know about me. I was born and raised in the province of Quebec, which is the French-speaking province of Canada. I was raised on a small family-sized dairy farm, so I've been exposed to agriculture from a very young age, and I've seen how it can be done in both good and bad ways. Another thing to know about me is that I really like to travel, and anytime I travel, I'm very interested in looking at the way agriculture is practiced around the world. So you'll see a few pictures of what I found about different ways of practicing agriculture during my travels in this presentation. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in nutrition from Laval University in Quebec City, and I've been working as a registered dietitian for a few years. And now I'm back in school to study naturopathic medicine, mainly because I was unhappy with mainstream nutrition. I was ovo-lacto vegetarian for a few years before I started eating meat again in 2010. So I just want to reassure all of you that I'm not here to try to convince anyone of what they should or shouldn't eat, but I just want to share the evidence that made me decide to eat meat again. I don't think you should trust anyone to tell you what you should eat, so don't even trust me. But I really encourage you to make your own research and make sure you keep an open mind while doing your research, though. So let's start with evolution. So starting eating meat was definitely a turning point in the diet of our ancestors by allowing us to get more calories from fat and decreasing our reliance on fiber-rich plant foods. This transition resulted in a decrease in the length of our intestines, especially our colon, and the energy that was previously reserved for the more difficult digestion of plant foods could now be reassigned to our brain. Whereas other animals don't spend more than 8 to 10% of their BMR, or basal metabolic rate, to fuel their brain, our human brain requires about 25% of our basal metabolic rate. So this evolution of human was only possible because we were able to decrease our reliance on intestinal fermentation from plant food to obtain energy, as you can see here. Moving on. About 10,000 years ago started the agricultural revolution, and the diet of our ancestors, hunter-gatherers, significantly changed to include more grains and carbohydrates and less animal products. Archaeologists can clearly see the result of this transition in the skeletons they found. Not only did our ancestors shrink in size when they moved to an agrarian society, but they also had a more fragile health, according to information collected from their bones. Now, let's look at the nutritional advantage of consuming meat. So the nutrients listed on this slide here are only found in food from animal origin, which means that ovo-lacto-vegetarians, and I should define ovo-lacto-vegetarian, simply means that those are vegetarian that are not eating meat, chicken, or fish, but they do eat. Ovo stands for egg and lacto for dairy. So it means that ovo-lacto-vegetarians might be able to get some of the nutrients that are only found in animal food, such as cholesterol and vitamin B12, but pure vegans, which means that vegetarians that don't eat any food from animal origin, even eggs and dairy, are not able to get these nutrients. So I won't cover all of these nutrients in detail, but I want to address a few of them quickly. First, I want to point out that beta-carotene, the precursor of vitamin A, which I'm aware is found in many vegetables and fruits in the vegetarian diet, well, beta-carotene is not equivalent to vitamin A. It's important to know that a very small percentage, about only 3 to 5% of the beta-carotene in the food we eat can be converted to vitamin A. And vitamin A is a very important vitamin for the health of our mucosa, which means the health of our gastrointestinal tract, for example, and also for the health of our immune system. So that's why I believe that it's very important to eat meat to get enough of this very important fat-soluble nutrient. Also, regarding iron, you can get some iron from legumes and other plant foods, but heme iron is a form of iron that's only found in animal product. And heme iron, as opposed to the type of iron found in plant, is a lot more bioavailable, easier to absorb for the human body. Actually, just as an anecdote, it doesn't prove anything, but I was anemic for years while eating a vegetarian diet. And despite eating a lot of legume and a lot of iron, I was even supplementing with iron, but still anemic with very low ferritin level. But it's only once I eliminated grains and started eating meat again that I was able to correct my anemia and feel a lot more, feel like I have a lot more energy. Now, just a quick word about the DHA and EPA. So those letters stands for long-chain omega-3 fatty acids. So we know omega-3 fats are very important, and you might know that you are able to obtain some plant-based omega-3s from flax seeds in the form of ALA, which stands for alpha-linolenic acid. But again, the body truly needs DHA and EPA. And while it's true that we can convert ALA, the plant form of omega-3 found in flax seeds, to DHA and EPA, the conversion rate is also very poor in most individuals. So that's why I believe that eating fatty fish as well as pastured eggs and grass-fed cows, because all of these foods are very good sources of DHA and EPA and those important long-chain omega-3 fatty acids. So those foods are very helpful in getting these healthy fats that are very important for your brain health. So if you want to know more about those different nutrients, I discussed a lot more. I talk a lot more about those different nutrition issues in my book, Digestive Health with Real Food. So, is all meat created equal? Should we go to our grocery store and start buying packages of meat with a little picture of the so cliché red barn on a field of green grass? I wish it was that easy, but as you may know, most of the commercial meat comes from confined animal feeding operation, or CAFOs. As you may have seen in movies like Food Inc., these animals are confined indoors and fed a species inappropriate diet that not only make them sick and miserable, but that also translate into less nutrition for us. But fortunately, I want you to know that you don't necessarily have to go vegetarian to condemn these practices. I believe that one of the biggest problems when it comes to food today is that we don't know where our food comes from anymore. Take this unsatisfied customer who complained of finding chicken in her chicken. People just want neatly packaged chicken breast and want to forget that it ever came from a real chicken. That makes me very sad. There's a big food disconnect, and we need to change that for people to become healthier and for the whole planet to be healthier too. So if we want people around us and the planet to be healthier, I believe that one of the first steps to take is to know where our food comes from. This simple change could result in a big improvement in this world. I do eat meat personally, but I also care about animals, and I know where my meat comes from. And most of it comes from here, the province where I'm living in Canada, which is called Ontario. And I get my meat from farms that are doing things right, where they care about the environment and the animal they raise, and also feed them a species-appropriate diet. And for ruminants like cows and bison, that means 100% grass. Why does it matter? Well, the saying, "you are what you eat," is true for cows too. Eating grass allows them to have a fat percentage that's just right for them. And beyond the amount of fat they contain, the quality of their fat is also different. Grass-fed cows have a lot more omega-3s and less omega-6 compared to grain-fed cattle, making their omega-6 to omega-3 ratio a lot more anti-inflammatory, as opposed to grain-fed meat, which can be a lot more inflammatory. So this omega-6 to omega-3 ratio in grass-fed cattle is just a reflection of the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio that's found in their feed. So you can see that grass has a better ratio compared to grains and soybean that are unfortunately fed to many cows living in confined animal feeding operations. It's also important to know that cows should be grass-fed all of their life. Each day a cow is fed grains, its omega-3 content decreases. And that's unfortunate because many farmers might be trying to do things right by producing grass-fed beef, but they might be finishing their beef on grains. So you may see meat that's labeled as being grass-fed, but it might be grass-fed for most of its life, but if it's grain finished, even 30 days at the end of their life can unfortunately remove many of the omega-3s that their meat contains. So it's really important to know where your food comes from and know what it eats, because you are what you eats. And the amazing nutritional value of grass-fed beef goes beyond that. Grass-fed beef also has a lot more vitamin E, CLA fats. CLA stands for conjugated linoleic acid. It's a type of fat that has been shown to have anti-cancer properties. It also had many other important minerals and antioxidants when compared to grain-fed meat. It's also free of antibiotics and hormones. And the risk of being sick with E. coli from grass-fed beef is almost non-existent in comparison to the meat from grain-fed animals. And the same is true with eggs. Eggs from pastured chickens is the best way to go. Chickens that can eat bugs, worms, and even dead carcasses are a lot healthier, and so are their eggs. Because, just a hint here, chickens are not vegetarian. The picture I took in this example was taken in Germany because I had the opportunity to live there for about a year. But I've also seen these deep orange nutritious egg yolks in other parts of Europe, in Australia, where I've also had the opportunity to live, and as well as in South and Central America. It's a bit harder to find up here in Canada, especially during winter time, but just know that the darker the egg yolk, the more nutritious it is. A dark egg yolk is indicative of a higher omega-3, vitamin E, vitamin A, vitamin D content, in addition to more eye-protecting lutein and zeaxanthin. So those are two antioxidants that are very beneficial for the health of your eyes. But what about all this studies showing that red meat will kill you? Every few months we are bombarded by the results of yet another study showing how red meat is so dangerous for you. It's important to never look at only one study. And oftentimes the headlines, the medias tend to want to make things more interesting for the public by, only presenting one very limited side of the story. For example, it's easy to see studies showing otherwise, like this meta-analysis, including 6 prospective studies, which wasn't able to identify any association between animal fat or animal protein and colorectal cancer. So that's just an example. But the main problem with all of these studies that we hear saying that red meat will kill us, basically, is that those studies are epidemiological studies. So there are many ways to design studies, but what is important to remember with epidemiological studies is that they show correlation. But correlation is not causation. That's the very first rule that you need to remember when looking at epidemiological studies. Those types of studies may help researchers identify areas where further studies are needed, but they cannot be used to draw conclusions and to determine the cause of what they found. If you look at the methodology of many of these studies about showing that red meat will kill us, you can find many flaws. For one, the data collection usually involves long questionnaires, asking participants what they ate in the last year. Can you even remember what you had for breakfast 2 days ago? So, in addition, many studies have clearly shown that healthy people tend to under-report their consumption of foods that are perceived to be less healthy, like red meat, while people suffering with chronic diseases like diabetes, heart diseases, and cancer tend to over-report them. So just to make that clear, healthy people will report on the questionnaire that they don't eat as much red meat as they actually do, while people that are already sick with diabetes or heart disease or cancer will report in the questionnaire that they eat more red meat than they actually do. That's just a reflection of the conventional nutritional dogma, because there's a lot of things that we can say about the analysis of these results, but that's what many studies have shown. So don't you think that those things could affect the quality of the data we have in those studies? Probably, yes. Also, if you look at the baseline characteristic of the participants, which means if you take a picture of all the participants in the study at the very beginning of these studies, you can easily see that the red meat eating group has higher rates of obesity, smoking, and sedentarity to start with. So that's not necessarily because red meat causes these things, but just because the group not eating meat simply tend to be more health conscious. And again, that's just a reflection of the mainstream nutritional dogma. So you tell me, in these red meat studies, is red meat only a marker of health consciousness or lack thereof? So we know very well that most people eating red meat are most likely to get it from a burger at a fast food restaurant with some French fries and a soda, but not necessarily from a grass-fed steak, organic vegetables, and kombucha like I do. So that can also make a big difference. Okay. All right. Now, if you're waiting for the perfect meat study, it might never happen. We do have good studies, but the best data we have is the ones that we can observe from the last hundreds of thousands of years, and that from the few remaining tribes still living as hunter-gatherers today. If we put human history on the span of 24 hours, we have introduced grains only for the last 6 minutes or so, and we've been eating paleo for most of the rest of that time. Of course, again, this is observational data, and we shouldn't jump to conclusions too fast. We need more evidence there than that. And here are a few very well-referenced resources that I recommend you to look at if you want more information and scientific evidence. If we look at the Nutrition and Physical Degeneration book, it was written by Dr. Weston A. Price, a Canadian dentist who, at the beginning of the 20th century, set out to explore the world and observe the relationship between different native and modern diets and tooth decay. His original working hypothesis was that the healthiest people on this planet would be eating a vegetarian diet. But what he found was very different. He didn't find any vegetarian tribe anywhere on this planet. Rather, he found that diets based on unprocessed, natural food, rich in animal fats, were key to dental health. And dental health truly is a reflection of overall health. Okay, let's switch gear a little now and talk about the environment. So-called quote-unquote modern agriculture is depleting our soils. There's just no doubt about it. The topsoil is only 8 inches thick, yet it is so important to retain water, nutrients, and microorganisms in our soils. If we continue to grow wheat, corn, soy, canola, and other crops at this rate, we'll be in big troubles. Do you know what happened to the Fertile Crescent where agriculture originates? Well, nothing grows there anymore. The topsoil is gone. The only way to fight desertification is with grazing animals. The action of their hoofs on the soil, along with the fertilization of the soil with their fecal matter, is the only known way to replenish the topsoil. I highly encourage all of you to watch Ellen Savory's TED Talk on the topic, with the link right here, to better understand this concept. I find it also very important. Oops. What's happening? Okay. Okay, we're back on track. Okay, the video just started and I was able to stop it. Okay, so let's move on with the next point I have to make. The least harm principle. So I find it very important to point out that you can still love animals even if you eat meat. So let's look at the least harm principle. Is a vegetarian diet really saving lives? So did you know that a cow or bison could easily feed a family of 4 for about a year? So that means 1 life to feed 4 others for a year. What people often don't realize, though, is that a vegetarian diet is not a bloodless diet. Many animals are killed with modern agriculture practice. First, you have all the animals that are killed, that are affected when they lose their habitat once it's replaced by fields. Then there are many more killed during field activities, especially mice and other small rodents, birds, snakes, etc. Are these lives less important, I ask you? I encourage you to read this paper here, looking at the least harm principle, where the author comes to the conclusion that humans are morally obligated to eat a diet based on vegetables, fruits, and large herbivores like cows and bison. So I hope that one day, my dream is that we can replace many of the monocultures we have today with pasture lands where healthy, happy, and tasty animals can live. So that's the way it has been for hundreds of thousands of years. It's the cycle of life. It's what made us human. Isn't it a bit presumptuous to think we can change that? I certainly don't agree with confined animal feeding operations, and I believe that there are ways to make things better, but that doesn't mean to have to go vegetarian. Another way that can help us pay our due respects to the animals that give their life for us is to learn how to use the whole animal. I believe it's a good way to be more respectful of life while getting more nutrition and even saving money as a bonus. These nasty bits, which can also be tasty, are real nutrient-dense delicacies, and a good way to review your anatomy if you're studying medicine. And if you still think that none of the reasons I mentioned in favor of meat make sense, maybe this will convince you. Bacon, enough said. Just kidding. I just want to conclude with these slides to show you that whether you eat meat or not, most of us probably agree on 80% of what a healthy diet should comprise: vegetable, fruits, and healthy fats. The protein aspect is the only thing that I want to leave you with as food for thought. So, voila, this was my part. So we each had 15 minutes to present our first argumentation. And at this point of the debate, my opponent is, after claiming that he had been vegetarian for 12 years and even writing quote-unquote 12 years of doing it right on the cover side of his presentation, besides the picture of a vegetarian cat eating kale, he discussed the many studies showing that vegetarians are healthier and live longer. He emphasized the importance of doing it right by combining legumes and grains to get all the required amino acids as per the protein complementarity theory. He mentioned that there is nothing wrong with a grain-based diet and that grains are very tasty, adding that you can also be gluten-free by sticking to grains like quinoa. His vegetarian wife was in the attendance to support him, and she claimed that she had never been anemic during over 20 years of eating this way. He also went over the typical arguments that producing meat creates a lot of methane, contributing to climate change, and that raising animals overburden the land with fecal matter. Of course, he also used the other typical arguments that farming meat uses more land and resources, and that eating vegetarian is more sustainable. It discussed how many religions are choosing to avoid meat, and he added that the only thing that distinguishes us humans from other animals is that we ought to know better. So at this point, I had another 5 minutes for my rebuttal. Okay. Oh, first, I just wanted to show this slide to show that correlation isn't causation. Because if it was, the number of active Facebook users would be driving the Greek debt crisis, and the numbers of babies named Ava would be responsible for the US housing bubble, and this mountain range on the right would be affecting the murder rate in the New York State. So as you can see, correlation isn't causation. Okay, so first I just wanted to address his claim that grains are maybe not optimal for everyone. So healthy whole grains. I actually believe that most of the land should be reserved for pastured animals rather than crops. Not only do I believe it's healthier for the planet, but I also believe that grains aren't optimal for human health. Yeah, sure, grains might be tasty, but so is sugar and bacon. So it's not the best way to determine whether a food should be part of your diet or not. If we look at grains more closely, there are many reasons why I believe that they're not good for most of us. You should know that this is definitely not what I learned as a dietitian. Believe me, I learned all about the food guide and pyramid and placing grains at the very base of it. But my personal research and experience working with hundreds of clients showed me otherwise. First, gluten is a real concern, not only for people with celiac disease, but also for what is now increasingly recognized as non-celiac gluten sensitivity, which is at least 6 times more prevalent than celiac disease itself. This is because it affects zonulin and alter intestinal permeability, leading to leaky gut and all sorts of problems. So, of course, that's in the gluten-containing grains. But grains, whether they contain gluten or not, also contain many anti-nutrients that can bind with the minerals you eat in your meals and prevent you from properly absorbing them. This is why it's so easy to be anemic or mineral deficient on a grain-based diet. Then we have lectins. One of them is WGA, which stands for wheat germ agglutinin, mostly found in wheat germ as its name implies. That's been shown to alter intestinal permeability, causing leaky gut, and contributing to autoimmune conditions. So wheat germ is definitely not a health food, far from it. And there are many other things in grains that can cause problems, especially for people with digestive issues like FODMAPs. Then the high carb and high glycemic index of grains can be problematic for blood sugar regulation. And there are many reasons for which I believe grains are not good for most of us. But I'll let you do your own research on that topic. Then the second point I wanted to address during my rebuttal was that methane is a problem. I would like to mention that we all produce methane, and it's been like that for thousands of years. And it's important to know that most the evidence I found showed that animals raised on pasture, healthy soil, if things were done that way, the methane could easily be reabsorbed and not cause harm. The real concern for the environment, in my opinion, comes from quote-unquote modern agriculture, and that includes organic agriculture too. Monocultures put a big strain on the health of our planet by resulting in a loss of biodiversity and desertification, but also think of all the fossil fuel burned for field activities and transportation of these grains and processing in the factories and then transportation to your grocery store. So we know that the majority of the land we have here in North America, whether in the US or Canada, is not used for pastured animals, but rather for monocultures. All right, and also it's important to remember that most of the agriculture we have in North America is probably not organic, and we have a lot of pesticides and chemicals used that are released in the environment, causing a lot of damage. That's the problem, not necessarily farting cows. And what about excessive fecal matters? Yes, I agree that this might be a problem with CAFOs or confined animal feeding operations, but not with pastured animals. Have you seen piles of manure in the pictures of the pastured animals I showed you in my presentation? Probably not. If you've ever been to a farm that's doing things right, you'll know that this isn't a real issue. And finally, to address the deforestation problem in Brazil, I don't think the problem is only due to making lands for grazing animals. I haven't been to Brazil to check it out, but I know that Brazil is also the second largest producer of GMO and has a lot of land dedicated to growing soybeans, corn, and other crops too. So I wasn't able to find a lot of evidence on that topic, but what I do know for sure is that my meat doesn't come from Brazil. It comes from right here. I'm sourcing it in Ontario, the province where I'm living. So I know that I am not contributing to the burning of the Brazilian rainforest. That's the power of eating as local. As I told you, the solution to many of our problems on this planet reside in knowing where our foods come from. Okay, and at this point, we had another 5 minutes. My opponent, had another 5 minutes for his rebuttal. Okay, so during his rebuttal, he mentioned that we don't need a lot of vitamin A, and that's why the conversion rate from beta-carotene to vitamin A is so low in humans. He also stated that only ALA, alpha-linolenic acid, the omega-3 fat found in flaxseed, that's the only essential nutrient according to the Institute of Medicine. But that long-chain omega-3s like EPA and DHA found in fish and grass-fed animals are not essential fats for humans. He also mentions that grains are important to the human diet because our brains require glucose from carbohydrates to function properly, and that ketones can only be used as a source of energy during starvation. He also mentioned that there's plenty of vitamin K in vegetables and that he had never heard of a problem of vitamin K deficiency in vegetarians. He also said that it was false to say that a cow could feed a family of 4 for a year, and that my calculations were wrong. And finally, he said that the life of a mouse was not equal to that of a cow. So to him, the least harm principle actually puts humans in a position of being obligated to become vegetarians. And he also mentioned that mice can be killed by being stepped on by cows. So I leave it up to you to decide whether the life of a mouse is equal to that of a cow. Okay. So during the real debate, I didn't have enough time to address some of the misconceptions my opponent had about my arguments, but I'll take the time to address them here now. First, about the omega-3s. Yes, it's true that only the plant form ALA omega-3, which is the one found in flax seeds, for example, is considered to be an essential nutrient. But do you know how essential nutrients are defined? A nutrient is considered to be essential to human health if it cannot be produced by the human body and needs to be obtained directly from food. So in theory, we only require the plant formed of omega-3 ALA, like the one found in flaxseed, because the body has some pathways to be able to convert this plant-based omega-3 to the longer chain omega-3s like EPA and DHA that our body truly needs. Whether the conversion happens at a sufficient rate or not is very questionable, though. So the definition of what an essential nutrient is doesn't tell the whole story. You can eat all the flax seeds you can, and your body can still be deficient in the non-essential but so important long-chain omega-3s like DHA and EPA that are crucial for brain and heart health. So I prefer to bypass this uncertain conversion and get long-chain omega-3s directly from my grass-fed meat and from fish. Then, with regards to vitamin K, well, I believe that my opponent wasn't aware of the difference between vitamin K1 and vitamin K2. Of course, I'm aware that vitamin K1 is plentiful in the vegetarian diet because it's found in many vegetables and leafy greens. And this vitamin K1 is a vitamin that's important for coagulation, or in other words, to prevent you from bleeding to death if you cut yourself. However, I was referring to vitamin K2, which is another whole different story. Vitamin K2 can be produced by the bacteria in your gut flora, but this process doesn't seem to be sufficient in most people, and because studies have shown that vitamin K2 deficiency is quite prevalent. This is probably because so many of us have some form of gut dysbiosis, which is a term that means gut imbalance. You probably agree that most of us have had antibiotics, and that could alter this process. Also, vitamin K2, unlike vitamin K1, is mostly found in food of animal origin. It's especially high in liver, egg yolks, and dairy from grass-fed cows, especially cheese, butter, and ghee. The one and only vegetarian source of vitamin K2 is natto, N-A-T-T-O, which is made with fermented soybeans. It's very gooey and strong tasting, and not many people eat it. And why is vitamin K2 so important? Well, it acts as a guide for the calcium in your body. Did you know that supplementing with calcium not only, supplementing with calcium is not necessarily a good thing if you don't have enough K2. So did you know that supplementing with calcium is not necessarily a good thing if you don't have enough K2? Without K2 to guide calcium in your body, this calcium is more likely to calcify in your arteries, increasing your risk of cardiovascular disease. It's only if you have adequate levels of vitamin K2 that the calcium you eat can be guided to your bones to keep them strong and prevent osteoporosis. So don't forget about this little known vitamin because it really is crucial for the health of your bones as well as that of your heart. Don't make the mistake of confusing vitamin K1 with vitamin K2. My opponent also made a point about the brain's requirements for glucose that I want to correct. Yes, it is true to say that the brain runs uniquely on glucose if you eat a moderate to high carbohydrate diet, but our body is smart and evolved to make sure that our brain wouldn't run out of fuel. Can you imagine our ancestors needing to eat a piece of fruit or a little bit of sweet potatoes every few hours to maintain their blood sugar levels and provide energy for the brain? Of course, we don't have to do that. First, our body can synthesize glucose from certain amino acids, which are broken down from protein. Additionally, your body is also able to use ketones, which is a byproduct of fat oxidation, or the burning of fat. And that doesn't only occur during starvation. Ketones can be produced in moderate to high amounts and provide energy for your brain in the context of a low-carb, high-fat diet. And these ketones can provide up to 2/3 of the energy required by your brain every day. So it is untrue to say that you absolutely require glucose or carbohydrates for your brain to function. Otherwise, I wonder how I managed to write my book and now study naturopathic medicine on a high-fat, low-carb, and grain-free diet. My brain seems to still be working relatively well, but I guess you can be the judge of that. But personally, I actually find that my brain is more effective when using a majority of ketones rather than glucose as its main source of energy, but this is personal, so you can experiment to see what works best for you. Then, regarding my calculations to show that a cow can feed a family of 4 for a year, I of course didn't mean a family of 2 adults and 2 ravenous teenagers. I'm talking about a family of 2 adults and 2 young children. The farm from which I get my meat here sells shares of a cow, and each 12th of a cow provides approximately 33 pounds of meat, which means that you have an average of 1 pound of meat a day to feed your family, which is sufficient for most families, especially if they are also getting protein from other sources like eggs, for example. So if the 12th of a cow can feed your family for a month, then the full cow will feed your family for a full year. That works. If your family eats more than 1 pound of meat a day, you could simply use the meat from 2 cows to feed your family for a year, or perhaps a whole bison. The numbers are still looking pretty good in terms of the least harm principle, don't you think? Because I believe that all life is equal, I value the life of a mouse as much as that of a cow. And I've never ever seen squished mouse in a field of pasture cows. They're not that stupid, but I have seen many squished mice in fields of cereals after harvesting. So, yeah. My opponent was asked his opinion about the consumption of caged eggs and dairy from confined cows, as people consuming an ovo-lacto-vegetarian diet might do. He explained that it is worse, in his opinion, to intentionally kill an animal for meat than it is to keep an animal alive in a cage. So basically, it's worse to kill a cow that's lived a healthy and happy life on pastures than it is to eat the dairy and eggs produced by cows and chickens confined to live all of their miserable life in captivity. What do you think? So we all have different opinions, and I hope you can ponder those different opinions to make your own. Okay, important point that I want to emphasize is that many vegetarians choose not to eat meat because they find it hard to digest. For example, they would say that meat sits like a rock in their stomach, but oftentimes it's simply a result of low stomach acid. If you would like to eat meat but feel like your body isn't able to process it well, talk to your healthcare provider to get possibly a combination of betaine HCl, digestive bitters, or digestive enzymes to assist your digestive system temporarily while it adjusts to eating meat again, as it was originally designed to. So vegetarians can be very passionate and emotional about their way of eating. I believe it can become a problem when you define yourself by the way you eat. For example, non-meat eaters are quick to introduce themselves saying, I am a vegetarian. I'm not saying it cannot also be a problem with the paleo community, because some people also define themselves by the way of eating, by saying I am paleo. But personally, I prefer never to say that. I do eat paleo, but most of all, I eat real food. That's right from my body. Real food that I know where it comes from, and I eat animals that are raised the right way. Period. Real food. To conclude, I want to emphasize that I'm not sharing this to convince anyone of what they should or shouldn't eat again. However, I do often feel judged by vegetarians for my decision to eat meat. I was even personally attacked for it. So I felt it was very important for me to share my point of view on this topic. I wanted you to know why I choose to eat meat and why I believe I can feel good about it. I feel like it's a good decision for my health and for the health of the planet. And now it's your turn to do your own research. If you can, I strongly encourage you to do your own experiment. Try eating vegetarian for 1 to 2 months, and then try eating paleo for another 1 to 2 months. See what works for you. You're the only one that can truly know how it feels to be in your body, and the only one that will have to live with it for the rest of your life. So that's what I have to say. I rest my case. Thanks for listening. And you can find out about me and my work at paleo-dietitian.com. And you'll find the information to find my Facebook page there, and also information about my book, Digestive Health with Real Food, which will soon have a companion cookbook of the same name on the shelves. So it was nice to talk to you.